All right, brilliant. Well, anyone who happens to be watching this video, thank you for dropping in and having a watch. So today I'm very fortunate to have Jenny Coady from UK Coaching with me to have a bit of a chat. I've been very fortunate to have Jenny as my mentor for quite a couple of years now, or quite a few years. Um, she's a great asset to me and to many other people. And I think we should just start off with Jenny. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, I always hate this part. I think it's really, I was talking to someone during the week about, do you go with like, okay, they need to hear about coach developing and how I got into it, or do they need to know that, apart from the accent, I'm not a native of London. But I am, from a sporting point of view, have taken the journey to be athlete into coach and then coach developing. And from an academic point of view, kind of a bit of a whirlwind, a bit of a meander from the IT world when the boom was on. And then I went back to what I felt was more comfortable and probably related to my sporting journey as well, which is sports psychology.
Mm.
And I'm here now kind of in the curiosity that I have, picking up different courses in CPD where I have time to do that. So that's kind of where I'm at. Other than that, it's fresh air when I can get a chance. I know we're in a tricky time at the moment, but
Yeah.
not playing as much anymore, and I definitely miss that. I definitely miss the action and the peaks and the troughs and the build up and the training and the sore muscles. But I've been enjoying the role at the moment. I'm with 17 different sports at the moment with UK Coaching, so like I don't go in, as you said, we've worked together, and although I've swam to a certain level, I don't know the tech tack and enough to get to your level and to be looking at a critique in it and supporting it that space. So it's great to be in a variance of sports, from shooting and what others, I was going to say basketball, but yeah, that's good for me as well. Shooting, basketball, speed skating, boxing, equestrian, swimming, diving. So there's a vast amount in the coach developer space that I'm working with at the moment, and just it's so exciting.
Yeah. Have you ever come across anything that has really surprised you, like from different sports that you just didn't know about?
Well, in my prep, yes. So before I go meet a coach, I try and do a bit of background info on them and the language of the sport. And I felt that's been a real help to me understand the nuances of the sport. It may not help me on the day if they're speaking fast and using all the jargon and the language that goes with that sport. But what I have noticed, surprising in kind of a different way, is that there's a common thread. There's a common thread in the issues coach face, the problems they come across, and how they overcome those barriers. So even though the language initially might be different and how the sport appears, the coaching, the relationship, it's all quite similar.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, obviously through you, well, not just you, but mainly through you, I've seen so many different things. It is fascinating all the different things that you do come up against, and some of the language. You're like, wow, what is that? That's gone right over my head. Like, we went to see hockey at one point, and that was one of them, right over my head.
Yeah, and isn't it funny sometimes the way, well, what I've experienced anyway, and you and I have definitely spoke about this, is where we're in a bubble and we're going at pace, and then there's maybe pressure to continue going at that pace, and you don't step outside. And then when you do step, and you go to say a hockey session, or I was at a speed skate session there last month, and I'm asking the same questions like, what am I seeing? And the athletes may be kind of really focused on something. I'm like, are they enjoying themselves? What does that debrief look like? And then you have a chat with the athlete and the coach after, and they're like, yeah, it was awesome. Kind of getting to read what different body language looks like in different sports, and then understanding the journey of the coach, which we've explored as well. And it's been really interesting to look at the pathways that are available for different coaches in different sports.
Oh, it's fascinating how different it all is. So I guess the main kind of topic we're going to talk a little bit about today is just kind of looking at methods of developing oneself, I guess. So my first kind of question I wanted to pose to you, Jenny, and I've already sent you these, so you've had a bit of a time to think. In
Better not
terms of,
anyway.
yeah, true. Are there anything in terms of, methods that you've seen people use to develop themselves? Have you seen that change over time, or, does it seem to be pretty similar?
I think that was a really good question. And it got me thinking about my coaching journey. So I started coaching. It was interesting. I started coaching because I went into the sports hall at the school while there was volleyball on, and the volleyball teacher was just not having that the basketballers were floating around. And she said, can you just come, your punishment from being in the gym at the wrong time is that you've come to a coaching session. And I had played and my family then were immersed in the sport. So my sister was doing a little bit of shooting around in the back garden and learning basketball through me, I guess. So because she was interested, I was doing some stuff at home with her. And then I went to the volleyball session and realized the transferable skills were there. And I was like, I'll take it up. And fortunately, I had great success for the first couple of years, and that was the hook. The success was the winning at the time. And so for me, I tended to replicate how I'd been coached. And it was by another teacher at the time. I hadn't.
Signal's going.
Knew that style, and I adapted that, and that was a very autocratic kind of. Sorry, it was very dictatorial. It was very like, do this and do this and do this, and I was like, oh my goodness, right. So that's what I should do when I'm coaching. And so I was ordering and yelling and doing this. And now when I look back, I'm kind of going, wow, okay, well, did I even think about development at that time? Or was I aware that there was an option to see all these other coaches? And it wasn't until I made the national team as a player and continued to parallel my coaching career that I just kind of, they were interwoven the whole way up. Fortunately and unfortunately, then through my playing career, I had about 10 different coaches when I was playing at a top level throughout maybe 10 years or 11 years. And they were from all over the world, some American style coaching, some European, and some Asian style coaching, and then some Irish and Western Europe. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm seeing all this, and I'm seeing also the negative or the things that I'm missing or we're missing as a team of athletes. And I was able to transfer that, obviously upskill myself in the meantime, but transfer that over to the athletes and understood more about feedback. So bringing it full circle, I would say it's a more challenging time. The changes around like technology advancements, social media, parents, the more knowledge they have sometimes, the trickier they are to manage or understand the relationships. And, you know, where people have the best intentions to support their child and see them on a certain trajectory, that it's that relationship and understanding that relationship needs to be transparent from the start to help guide it. So that really sent me off down a rabbit hole of my own journey and tried to see, like, you know, how many hats are a coach wearing? Is the coach wearing these days? How much expectation is on their head to be the psychologist and the relationship builder, the S&C expert, to understand all of these as well as do their passion of coaching?
Well, there's some really cool points in there. And the first one I want to touch on, I did not know you had so many coaches when you were an athlete. And actually, that really, I can really relate to that, because when I was an athlete, I had the same situation. So I was very fortunate to train in Australia, and we had a bit of a time, I think it was about 9 months, where our coach left, and we then had about 9 or 10 different people coming in on monthly periods almost before our new full-time coach arrived, who thankfully was probably the best coach I've ever had in my life or ever seen. You know, and that was such a fascinating experience, exactly how you say, to have, you know, that American influence or that Australian influence or British or whatever it was, and having this huge melting pot of ideas. And even as an athlete, I didn't know how much of that I took on until I started coaching, and it was really fascinating. It's so challenging at the time, but then when you look back at it, and I look back at it now, I don't know what it's like for you, I really value that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're the gems. And like you said, at the time, I struggled where one coach had a certain style of coaching, another coach, then the literally the next season, you were having to adapt to a different style of coaching where, you know, I'm going to coach on the fly. We're not going to do much in our training sessions, where the next year could be really high expectations and high standards. And you're motivated by that. But then again, you get one chance to make a mistake and you're off. And there was no feedback, there was no open discussion. So your coping strategies and mechanisms were changing each year. And at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, you're just doing the what would you call, like, internalizing with your group. The cohesion is getting stronger with the team because having a little moan about what's going on. But actually, what I'm storing for now and been able to look back and going through the journey with different coaches at the moment, I'm able to relate where some coaching systems might be a little bit disjointed or they need a bit of support. I'm able to identify some of the issues and support them with that.
That's really cool. And just a couple of the other little bits as well. You know, things I've actually just read recently. You talked about coaching hats. Such a fantastic kind of time to bring that particular phrase up, because, you know, as you already know, I'm reading John Wooden's book for probably the second or third time, I think. And he talks a lot about different hats and different people require different things. And that for me has been quite a big learning curve, not just to do it myself, but also to help, I think, parents in particular understand that, yes, we need equality in the world, but not everyone can be treated exactly the same, because they might need, I, for example, needed a hard push. People could be tough on me and I was like, good, bring it on. Whereas someone else might just need a little bit more of a pat on the back and go, right, okay, this is what we're going to do, rather than that firm. It's such a great phrase that, that the wearing of hats, but also something, that I think is really, it's really dynamic on a daily basis. And you also mentioned, obviously, the way things seem to be working, with whether it's development or whether it's just life in general, everything is so fast. And this has been a good time, I feel, for us all to slow down with this pandemic going on at the moment. But as mentioned to you briefly, the article I was reading in the Harvard Business Review today, that talks about that an awful lot in terms of the dynamics of leadership and coaching, and what how you need to deal with and manage different situations. I mean, I know for me, that is something from you that I learned an awful lot about, and something I felt really able to open up and chat about quite in depth. And I can talk.
Yeah, I know, but that is really important. I think that's a massive gain when people talk about coach development, they talk about mentoring, and actually it's just people development. It's supporting somebody, and then you get to the next level of it. So if I know that we can create a rapport, that you're understanding kind of the balance and what you like and don't like in a week, where your downtime and your own CPD is, then you're bringing the best version of yourself into coaching. You're bringing the best version of yourself into our conversations, and the trust is building, the empathy is there. And then all of a sudden you're like, here, yeah, come in and watch my session. I know it's a non-judgmental, or, we're assessing and we're sharing ideas, and I'm asking why about this and why, but you understand the curiosity is coming from an authentic place. Yeah. And that's a really important part of that. And I've really enjoyed the journey with you and exploring that, because I can see the more we have, the more conversations we have, whether it's sharing, coaching practice, philosophies, book reviews, that we're getting an honest kind of reciprocal conversation going. There's a true you coming through in it.
Yeah, and it's been very positive, tremendously positive to have you on. I guess in my life, it's been helpful, very helpful. Nice. So I guess kind of like what the next kind of little area to move on to, just from your perspective, kind of with what you do on a day-to-day basis, do you feel like there are any kind of key themes that you tend to be focusing on more and more now with modern coaches, or are there any key things that you feel like that's like the way forward?
Good question. And this, as much as I mentioned it there, with more information can be to someone's detriment. So people who are not immersed in sport, maybe as a parent, or maybe somebody involved in a club setup but doesn't know the intricacies of coaching yet, the more information they're seeing and hearing, I saw a YouTube video, Eddie Jones said this at the weekend, we should be doing this, or I've seen this from Michael Phelps, he says this book says that. And then the coach is trying to meander through all of these expectations that come in. But equally, I think one of the things I've noticed over the years, and topics wise, would be there isn't much from a standard like plan and ask the why and the deliver element of that. That should always be there, and understanding why you're doing something, and is it the tradition of the sport? Is it how you've been coached? Have you been stretched or challenged in the way that you do something before, in a safe way? But what I have noticed is, alongside what I was saying there, is the coach's ability to navigate the ever-evolving social sphere and the egos that exist inside that. So, we can read and digest books. I remember at one stage, you were sharing some really insightful stuff around the Sir Alex Ferguson book that you'd read, and then there was a couple of other books following up. And my question back to you at the time was, right, what are you taking from that book, and are you giving yourself time to digest it and impact? And you might say, I think one of the times you were like, no, it's just a good read. Obviously I take, you being you, take loads from stuff, but at the time you understood, you were so self-aware that you understood where that book was a nice read. There were some key points, but they weren't relevant now with the trajectory and the direction that you were going with the club, and all of the stuff that was going on there. But equally, it's kind of enlightening or supporting coaches to their own potential. So there's a lot around self-awareness. There's a lot around understanding the individuals in the environment. There's a lot about understanding the environment itself, and the impact that it has both inwards and outwards, and then coaching practice. That comes in as a broad span. But we've touched on a couple there. There are kind of threads that coaches can have now in snapshots or small little modules that they can do around psychology and physiology and nutrition, S&C, all those different components. And I think there's a safe space in a coach saying, right, I don't know X, Y, and Z, but I know a little bit about all of them, not deeply, but that can help me with my coaching practice. So it's supporting coaches to understand what and when they need to know things, and then signposting them, because I don't know all the answers, to different areas and different places.
No, and again, that's something for me that's been extremely helpful. And you're very right about the social media aspect. I mean, you could surf Twitter all day and have opinions coming out your ears. You know, it's I think while it's fantastic to have so much information, and I thrive on that. You know, I like seeing opinions. You know, I was reading an article today that someone had sent me, and they'd annotated bits and pieces of it with their thoughts, and I was like, well, you know, so some of the thoughts were quite damning about what I was reading. But I was like, well, that's fair enough. That's your opinion. That's good. But I read this, and I'm going to try and look at this from a broad perspective and see where the person who wrote it was coming from, first and foremost. But then also go, well, is that something I want to take, or is it something I'd rather leave alone? And leave alone maybe for now, but maybe in 10 years I might come back to it. You know, the word dynamic comes to my mind an awful lot when I think about knowledge and learning and implementing things. I mean, there's probably things that me and you have had conversations about in the last year or two that may not be something that will impact what I do on a daily basis today, but in 10 years it might suddenly come around, and I'll probably sit there going, Jenny told me that. Oh, I remember that conversation.
Yeah, I'm getting a phone call and you're like, I'm on poolside, but
I just realised this thing.
yeah. And that, I think that's the gem around going back to me on the coaching journey and understanding kind of even the coaches around me and the transition into coach development, is that the understanding self is kind of, there's many facets to that, and they won't all, you know, you won't be growing rapidly. It's not a course that you pick up. It's the time you take to stop and reflect, the feedback that you take on and how you take it on and how you process that. And sometimes it's personal, and some personal kind of in your environment around your social networks and understanding the growth of that. Sometimes it's athlete feedback around your session and that kind of development and planning. But this is one thing I would say that's tricky around coach developing, is that I would have a conversation with you and you'll come back to me and you'll go, yeah, it's a great conversation. Or we might set a few seeds and you're like, yeah, okay, thanks, see you later. And it could be 10 years. Like I don't imagine that the friendship will end and the mentoring support will end. But as far as like the program that you initially started on, when that finished, that was just a drop in the ocean of your coaching journey. And so there was some really, really good relationships that evolved with the different coaches that were on it, and different workshops and exposure to different environments. But it's a long journey of coaching, and hopefully those tools that we talk about and have used that during the years, then you go, oh yeah, okay, now's the right time to pull that in. Or that was useful, or I might pick up the phone to somebody who was in a different sport and have a chat, and maybe, chat about different things you've seen or heard. But it's some of it is subjective, because it's a conversation. It's the value between those two people on what they're doing. Yeah. And whether it's videoing a session or miking you up, or there's some language digestion, or it's just a chit chat in the cafe, they both can have equal impact, just in a different measurable way.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of, I guess, moving this forward just a little bit more again. So kind of off some of the points, the things that we've already talked about, from your perspective, do you think, and this might be very challenging to maybe put your finger on one, but do you think there are any really key or vital skills that modern coaches now need to really consider or tap into?
That was the hardest question. And mind you, now I didn't have a lot of time to look at them, but I think, me being me and us having the chats like we do, I think we could take hours on those questions and dive right in. But if you were to ask me for just one at the forefront, it would be empathy. And you and I have chatted already about the different hats coaches wear and the journeys that your athletes are on. And there's an awareness that everybody needs some sort. So if we look at the holistic approach and the biopsychosocial, so yes, many, many years looking at the biological element and the growth and development of the athlete as a physical development, and then there's a psychological, and then there's a sociological element. So all of those considered, and the athlete's journey, you could be getting a different version of that athlete that comes in, and it's trying to connect with them and live in their shoes momentarily, to see what you can do to support them on their journey. Like I think the adaptability is another one. Again, like having your session planned, meticulous detail, knowing what you're doing, come in, vibe that the group is not really where you need them to be, and just scratching the plan. Versatile, adaptable, call it what you like, patient. And that may happen a few times, and you understand that, yeah, okay, we may not get from A to D by going through B and C. We might have to go back to A and B a few times. But I know where we're going, and I believe in it. And I think the one other thing, and you'll know from Simon Sinek and one of your favorite books, like having a check-in with your why.
Yeah.
Like, it's me what I do and why I do it. I just love what I do. I love looking at people's space and environment. I can't just say it's chatting, because we do go to the nth degree to try and support what the journey looks like. As a coach, where does that next level of support go? Is, if it's into coaching practice, brilliant, let's dive into that. Let's look at your loading and your testing. Let's look at your cycles and planning. Or if it's actually just you and your confidence and the direction of your journey, then that's equally as important.
You know what? It's so great that you mentioned Simon Sinek there in Start With Why. Great book. Nice plug there. Talking about checking in with your why, I really feel like, I think it was at the end of last summer, before we started this season. Obviously, it's now been abruptly ended. I felt like I had a good check in with all of that. I did feel, and I'm more than happy to be honest about this, that I was getting too concerned with their strategy, and too concerned with minor detail, like almost ultra details, and almost too concerned with results. I was starting to feel myself going down that tempting road of focus on results. And my why has always been to inspire others to be the best version of themselves. And I felt like I was not losing that, but I think I'd lost that grasp on that just a little bit. And I know this season I've really tried to bring it back, and I feel like I have. And actually this break, even though we wouldn't necessarily choose to have it, has really helped me bring that back again, and I'm feeling that again. So it has been very positive in a lot of ways. Sorry.
That is really awesome. And what it's also representative of is the authentic self that you bring into this conversation to share, that people do realistically have peaks and troughs. They do go through transitions and changes in their coaching role, and no trauma has to happen in that space for you to have this epiphany. It could just be a moment where you realize that actually maybe they're not ready to come on this journey with me. Maybe I'm going at pace, and I've been through a program, I've been through some CPD, or I've just had a really good conversation, I've read a good book, and I'm ready to impact this. I see it. And then you go, I have to check in with their whys. I have to check in what their motivations are, because actually it could be a really heavy, arduous process for me to drag any coaches through, athletes with me. And then it may, even within that, you get a few people buying in to the shift or the change or the way of working, because they're ready and they're on board and they trust you. Again, it's like empathy being one of the, I think, looking at empathy and authenticity as the foundations for trust, and then you build on that trust, and like once you have that, it's electric, because they're investing in coach knows what he's doing, Chris knows where he's going, and then some others may need that other time. That's not you, that's just where they're at, going back to that holistic approach. They may not be ready, they may have other things that are happening that's hindering kind of their ability to connect.
Yeah, and I think that's where that word patience comes in, and for most of us, that's where that's going to happen. That, you're exactly right. We could be ready to start shooting into the stratosphere, but not everyone is quite at the right place to be on the platform to go to that. So you just got to be patient. That's where that, maybe in 10 years or 5 years or whatever it happens to be, maybe that's where that comes in, that maybe at a certain point, everyone's there and you're like, right, okay, finally we'll go and do this thing, but other than that, I mean, for me, we've just got to then keep focusing on the basics, trying to make sure that they understand why they're there, understand how they do things, and what the outcomes are that they need to be. a psychologist friend of mine from last week's session that we did was we talked about process and performance equals outcome. Great process and systems, great performance and attitude, then take you to the place that you want to be. And this is where I just mentioned I felt I was getting too much into. I was going a little bit maybe too outcome focused again. Maybe just putting my toe into that dark world, rather than just really focusing on the things that I could do on a daily basis. So
yeah, that's really interesting. I think one of the things there that maybe is good to chat about very quickly is the soundboards, the people that you have in your circle, in your network. There is in that Matthew Said's book, Rebel Ideas, he talks about cognitive diversity, that you're not having people that are just inside the sport. You're not having people that are just inside your environment, that are your soundboard for feedback. That if you have an idea, and sometimes the athletes and possible parents are like, yeah, that's good, let's go. Or there might be a chairman who's saying, yeah, awesome idea, drive it on. And then you flag the idea to somebody who's outside the sport, or even, in our cases, sharing some ideas. And you go, I ask a question and you go, okay, give me a moment to come back to that. No, we're on track again. And in some cases, people aren't on track. Sometimes you do need to have a look at who's in that space. Who are your sharers, your critical friends that are going to give that honest reflection of what you're throwing at them.
Absolutely, and it's kind of hitting on the head there. It's having people around you that you value and you trust, irregardless of where they come from or how much you think they know. It doesn't really matter. It's if you want to talk about something, I know I can talk to you about something, and you will tell me what you think. You won't hesitate, but also I don't mind that happening at all. Because I know it's for my own value, my own good. All right, great. So
here's a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
On that key skills, what was it for you that I guess in the program, with me being your coach developer, what was it that you felt in me that allowed you to share more, to excel, to feel comfortable getting to the next level of like, yeah, I'll enter into the coaching practice. This is something that me and a couple of other coaches and the committee have created. But yeah, this is for you to have kind of explore. What was it?
Right. Well, to be honest, I think it's something that you've already talked about in this little video here, and that was very early on at the start. And you talked about your preparations before going into an environment that you may not know much about it, or you might not have seen too much in it, and you go in there not necessarily knowing a lot of the detail about what's going on the day to day, but you always struck me and always have struck me as someone who goes in. You come into my environment and you are very comfortable in that environment, and you go, I know what I know, and I'm going to find out what's going on. I'm going to ask good questions. I'm going to try and dig a little bit deeper on these things. And it's almost that's what I see a leader as being, someone who doesn't need to come in and try and go, look how good I am. It's very much like you just have. I don't really know how to describe it particularly well. I've just always had the sense that you've just allowed me to be me, and you've been very open, and you're not judgmental of things, and very much just keen and interested to find out more and to find out new information, and then dig deeper on it. Yeah. It's something that I've taken away quite a lot with my conversations. So some people say things to me and, oh, well, let's dig a little bit deeper on that one. Tell me a little bit more about that. And it's just that it's the language, it's the way of speaking. It's the active listening part. And
it's just good to hear that other side of it, because so often I think about the skills, and it's one question I don't know, and maybe I don't ask enough. And this, even to coaches to ask this question, like, stop and think about it. Like, how am I being perceived? And how am I being received? Like, what do people value in those conversations, and how can I do more of that better for that person? So yeah, going back to understanding the athletes or understanding coaches in my angle and from my role is also really interesting. And thank you for your honest feedback on that, because that is something that will help me grow in my role, to understand that the approach I took with you was a genuine side. I'm genuinely really curious as a person. I love doing what I do, and I was really invested in supporting you on your journey and not about my journey. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
No problem. You put me on the spot a little bit, but I think as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, it's going to be that, I think. So that's good. Right, so just to finish off, because I know that you are short on time, Just wanted to finish off with a pretty typical question. Do you have a number one book on your reading list at the minute, or because I know you just started a book club, so
Yeah,
is there a number one?
Well, there's a couple of things. So we started David Epstein's Range,
Yep.
14 coaches together, just during the time that we're in, where some had more time, some were still finding their feet. I put the option out there. So we're reading through that at the moment, which I'm interested to dive into a little bit deeper. I'm also reading at the same time, and it's heavy on the numbers and the statistics side of things, but so interesting, is Invisible Women, Caroline Perez.
Okay.
And just looking at, I guess I'm in a space at the moment where there aren't a lot of female coach developers. A lot of the coaches that I work with are male. And I wondered if I just check myself, I never consider it. I just go in and everybody is there and we coach and we share. But listening to different people experience coach developing and how they're received in different environments where maybe there's not a lot of female coaches. So do the relationship between male coaches and female coach developers, how they're received and perceived in different sports. So all that had been ruminating, and I just thought, I've heard a lot of good stuff about this book, and it doesn't talk about sports specifically. It just talks about different statistics around the world and how they've adapted in different countries. So that's there on my list. I saw you put something on a list about my desert island book, and I thought, oh goodness me, what would that be? And I thought, there's so many, like some books I can read right through, and like we spoke about earlier, there'll be one thing in it, I'll be like, yeah, I'll take that. Other times I'm like, I'll have to read that again, or no, there's gems in this book, and I'll highlighting and I'll be tabbing. But a book that I thought, if I wasn't going to take a photo book, but I heard that's probably, from watching all these survivor programs, psychologically that's probably damaging to look at photo books of family and friends. It would be Ikigai.
Oh yeah,
great.
yeah.
But like, if there's a book that would show me the secret, or like linking me to the why and the secret to happiness, and the way you can do all the things I love to do. So best ways of eating and enjoying movement and enjoying community and relationships and communication. Gosh, like it's a really simply put and well written book. But the messages, they're profound. And I've visited probably 2 or 3 different times. I actually put Japan on the honeymoon list. So yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been, that was one of the books that when I finished it, there was a massive, it was like the recipe for happiness.
It was a feel-good factor.
There definitely is.
When I finished it, it was definitely a feel-good factor.
Yeah. So that would be my Desert Island books. And I'll probably have to revisit that soon in this period. But yeah, one of those.
That's worthwhile, definitely. All right, well, Jenny, thank you very much for taking the time to have a chat. I mean, this is basically like us having a normal phone call, really, with a couple of little scripted questions.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Thanks for having me. And you're doing a fantastic job sharing insights. And I listened to last week's reframing. I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. I've shared it with another good few of my coaches and stuff, and had great conversations. So thanks for putting the effort into doing that.
No problem. I mean, I don't know everything, but I'm more than happy to share stuff. So,
awesome.
All right, brilliant. Well, cheers, Jenny. Thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.